So this is former American ambassador to Israel, David Friedman, talking to Ben Shapiro about the American administration's response to Hamas executing in cold blood 6 hostages, including an American citizen. What did they do? Point the finger of blame at Netanyahu. It is so sick. There was no deal on the table that Netanyahu could have done to free these hostages. Hamas weren't coming to their table. Netanyahu was. The Americans themselves have admitted that. I'm not even sure they should be agreeing to any kind of deal with Hamas. They need to destroy them. But either way, the pointing of the finger at Netanyahu, it's at a time of Israel and the Jewish people feeling aggrieved again, so aggrieved as they did reliving the October 7th horror. It is sickening. And I don't think we've really paused for thought to think about this kind of response and how sickening it is of Biden to say that Netanyahu needs to be doing more in the aftermath of that. I want you to watch Ambassador Friedman's words reflecting on this, because what he says is really poignant.
So obviously, let's start with the news of the weekend. Horrifying news out of Israel as 6 bodies are found in a terror tunnel held by Hamas, 6 hostages for over 300 days in the back of the head, including an Israeli American. And the first response, apparently, of the rest of the world is to tell Israel to make more concessions to Hamas. That includes the current president of the United States, Joe Biden, who awakened from his torpor in Rehoboth Beach to explain that Benjamin Netanyahu is apparently not doing enough. What's your take on the situation?
I was horrified by that, and I'll tell you why. Israel's going through a massive trauma since October 7th, and that trauma was relived again a couple of days ago when these 6 hostages were found dead. And look, there are political divides in Israel, and everybody knows that. But for Biden to say on a day like yesterday or 2 days ago, whenever he said it, that Bibi Netanyahu is not doing enough to free the hostages, not only is it absolutely false, but it pours gasoline on a fire of America's most important ally. I mean, the people of Israel need some comfort. They need a hug. They don't need to be told that their democratically elected leader doesn't care about the hostages, which is an absolute lie. An absolute lie. And you know what the proof of it is, because you know this as well. In unfortunately in Israel and in America, these things, everything leaks constantly. I mean, any story out is out in about 5-10 minutes. So here's the story that no one ever wrote. What was the deal? Right? What was the deal? How many hostages were being released and when? What was the price? How many murderers were being released? What was happening to Sinwar? What was happening to Mashal? What was happening to Gaza? Who was going to rule over it? Was Israel getting out, or permanently getting out temporarily? What was? The answer is no one knows, because there was no deal. And the idea of accusing Netanyahu at a time when he's fighting for his life, for the life of the country, is the worst political stunt, the most obnoxious political stunt I've ever seen anybody pull. And they should be ashamed of what they did.
Ambassador Friedman, for those Americans who look at the conflict in the Middle East and they say, why does this even matter to us? Why is this something that actually we should care about? Why isn't this just a faraway conflict in a distant land? I think what this speaks to, the reaction of the Biden administration, or say the UK government, which is cutting off weapons to Israel in the middle of a war, it speaks to a new kind of Western idea since the end of the Cold War, that the West does not deserve to defend itself, that when something terrible happens to the West, it probably is because the West has been too harsh. It's because the West itself has brought it upon itself. It's all backlash. Why should what's going on in Israel matter to people who don't live in the region?
Well, in the first place, it's disrupted everybody's lives. I mean, look at how those who hate our country have mobilized upon this war to foment insurrection everywhere. I mean, you can't go to college in America anymore in the blue states. You just can't go. I mean, I have friends whose kids, they're paying lots of money for tuition. They can't go to class, because this war has mobilized a current within the United States that is Marxist, communist, anti-American, and wants to destroy us. And those that want to destroy Israel want to destroy America, and Israel is the tip of the spear. And as goes Israel, ultimately that's the Western world. I mean, that's the tip of the Western world. They're fighting the front closest to our enemies.
So he's absolutely right in what he's saying, and it's this kind of thinking that Ben Shapiro touches on, which is so important. This thinking of, you have to blame basically the West or Israel for everything that happens to them, rather than actually saying, I'm going to put the moral accountability at the doorstep of those who did this. And likewise, we've seen in some people in Israel and the American administration saying, when Hamas do this to Israel, well, Netanyahu, it's your fault. It's all based in a premise that fundamentally the Palestinian grievance is a legitimate grievance. It's a grievance that Israel somehow started, and therefore it's Israel's problem to solve, and that all these problems, there are just attempts at resistance, even if they're wrong, but their resistance, and only through Israel remedying her original sin of 1948, that will solve the problem. The problem with that is that this is not about a legitimate grievance. A basic study of history will show you this is about a hateful ideology, a jihadist ideology. You know, people thought, let's appease the Germans in the 1930s. But it wasn't about appeasing them because they just want to restore their national pride. They wanted global dominance. So do here. They genuinely want to kill the Jews. They want a Jewish state gone. Look, the great thing they say is so terrible is Arabs were displaced in 1948. Well, guess what? It didn't need to happen. The United Nations proposed a partition plan in 1947, and they said, right, we've got Jews living here, we've got Arabs living in this land. According to the precedent of international law, this land belongs to the Jewish people entirely, because that's what was agreed at international conferences in San Remo prior to the Balfour Declaration when the British controlled it. But anyway, we understand Jews and Arabs are living here. Now, the last sovereign state to exist here was a Jewish one thousands of years ago. Other than that, it's just been controlled by nations and empires, including the Arab Islamic conquest of the 7th century. So how are we going to solve this problem? Well, what we'll do is we understand the Arabs might want their own state as well. So we'll split the land. We'll have a Jewish state and an Arab state, and Jews can live in the Arab state and Arabs can live in the Jewish state. Done. There was no displacement that had to occur then. No one was going to be moved around. But what happened? The Arabs said no. No to any Jewish state. And so therefore Israel then had to fight a war, and in this defensive war, captured territory. And many Arabs left, a lot of them because they were told to leave by surrounding Arab armies. So you need to understand that fundamentally, at every step of the way, with everything that you complain about, whether it's this recent war, whether it's checkpoints, whether it's occupation, whether it's all these things, the moral onus lies with the Arabs who are unprepared to accept a Jewish state, which has far greater legitimacy and right to exist than an Arab state would in that land. Given what I just told you about international law, about history, and about a national identity. There's no unique national Arab-Palestinian identity. They don't even want it. The leaders of the Arabs prior to Israel's creation, and even afterwards, were happy to be part of other Arab countries, southern Syria. That was the plan in 1948. The Arab armies would just take over the land and it would be part of Jordan, Lebanon, Egypt. They'd all carve out bits for themselves. There's no national self-determination cause here for the Arabs. They only started to create it in the 1960s as a cynical ploy to wipe out the Jewish state. But let's understand, it's not about legitimate grievance. They play the grievance card. It's self-inflicted. And unfortunately, many people fall for it. Hi, thank you so much for watching. To watch another one, click here. To stay up to date with all our content, click here to subscribe. And if you're able to, you can help support JTV to grow and grow by clicking join below this video, where you can become a member and get perks including early access to videos and private live discussions with me. But most of all, you'll be partnering with us on our mission to change the world.